I thank the gentleman from Georgia. Let me follow up, Mr. Schlansky. What agencies? You said there are some agencies you don't review their guidance. What are those agencies?
We don't typically review guidance, interpretive guidance documents, for example, of the Internal Revenue Service. We don't review typically guidance documents of independent agencies.
So no independent agencies.
We do not review independent agencies.
All right, so Department of Commerce.
The Department of Commerce is an executive branch agency.
So do you review any rulemaking that comes from them?
Yes, we do. We review many rulemakings that come out of the Department of Commerce.
Guidance?
If there is a guidance document that we're aware of that has regulatory effect,
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at, without me guessing which ones, which agencies do you exclude from reviewing guidance other than the IRS?
Independent agencies.
And no others?
No others that I
can
think
of.
All right,
so part of your process is really to look at guidance with the EPA, for example.
But the answer is yes, but not every guidance that the EPA might issue.
So internal guidance as you don't, external guidance as you do. So if they're giving a guidance, because what's happening, as you well know, is that there are rules, there are guidances, but depending on who you're talking to, they treat the guidance as a rule. Would you agree with that?
So
in practice?
What we try to do is—
Yes or no? Do you agree with that or not?
I agree that there are sometimes guidances that have—
That get treated as rules.
Yes, and we try to review those.
All right. How do you make sure that you review all of those if they're being used as a rule? Because what I've found is with guidances, the agency many times will use it as a rule if it's to their advantage, and if it's not being implemented, then they say, oh, well, that's just guidance, it's not a rule. How do you deal with that?
Well, we deal with the situation where an agency is issuing a guidance that purports to interpret a rule, and we look to see whether it is extending the rule, whether it was adding burdens that had not been commented on, that were not part of the rulemaking process.
All right. So tell me how you use the unified agenda to promote transparency, or does it?
Well, the objective of the unified agenda and plan, so there are two different documents. The agenda is a broad document that will contain things that are a little more far-reaching into the future. The plan is really the more focused document on what the agency intends to do over the next year. What we try to do is make sure that all rules and significant guidances are listed there so that the public—
So when they will be coming up so the public will know about them.
Exactly.
All right. So it is important that you make that as transparent as possible so that the general public can know about it.
That is why we've worked very hard over the past couple of years to get that on track for its publication both in the fall and the spring.
Well, it's curious you say that. If you'll go ahead and put up the slide, because if that's truly the agenda, and that's truly your responsibility, let me show you this particular chart. Now, what we've gone back to is the spring of 2012 when it wasn't even issued. The unified agenda wasn't issued. And so you can say, well, that was not really your responsibility at that particular point. But let me tell you, the concern that I have is each time that you publish it, it's the Friday before Christmas, the day before the July 4th, the day before Thanksgiving, the Friday before Memorial Day, and the Friday before Thanksgiving. And if you truly want transparency, why are you rolling this out at a time when people wouldn't really be focusing on it? That's what we call the Friday afternoon data dump, but it's really what you're doing with regards to the unified agenda. Why would you do that?
Well, with all respect, sir, the agenda remains posted.
I understand, but when it comes out, it is newsworthy. And so, well, maybe you can help me a little bit further then, with all due respect. Why do we have question marks under the spring of 2014 and the fall of 2014 in terms of the plans as you talked about? That's under your watch.
So I'm sorry, both of those were issued. I don't understand. The plan and agenda were both issued in the fall and the spring. I don't see what you're referring to.
Okay, that, from what I understand from council, that's a memo that's basically saying on how to respond, not that you put it out.
Oh, the memo to the agencies and the deadline for agency plans, those were issued in each of those times, so I can't, I do not have any knowledge of why your slide has questions.
Okay, well, Mr. Shalansky, I guess the concern that I have is we've asked you for those. The committee has, and you haven't responded
I'm sorry, you've asked me for what, sir?
for those documents. And you say you've published them, but we've asked for them, and you haven't.
The memo to the agencies for the plan and agenda were duly issued. We received responses, and we posted those plans and agenda. It may be that it happened before holiday weekends, but I would add that, or near holidays, but they were in the fall, they were in the spring, everyone knew they were coming, they were well covered, and they remained posted.
Yeah, I guess my question, and I see the ranking member has come back, so we will go to another line of questioning here. You mentioned earlier with regards to the emails, and when I was asking all of that, you said that we are not entitled to that. How, under what statute, or are you claiming executive privilege on why we would not have those?
Sir, let me clarify. I'm not claiming executive privilege at all. We at OIRA are part of a review process prior to publication of a rule, prior to the point with a proposed rule where it goes out for public comment. We are part of a deliberative process where the integrity of this process, the honest discussion and deliberation between staff in OMB and OIRA, staff in the agencies, has to be able to occur. The purpose, we do post, I mean, just to be clear, everyone can know what the rule looked like when it came into OIRA. That's not hidden from view. Everyone knows what the rule looks like when it goes out. There's docketing on everything that goes back and forth on Clean Air Act rules under the statute. So that's quite clear. And in terms of staff emails and things like that, we don't disclose those because they're part of a deliberative process, and they encourage honesty and integrity in the discussions between staffs of agencies and OIRA.
So what your testimony here today is that in keeping that information from the public encourages honesty and transparency. Is that your testimony today?
It encourages staff to talk honestly with each other, to ask hard questions of each other, to discuss what might be problems or incompleteness in a rule. It's worth making clear again that we at OIRA are just part of the review process.
All right, so let me close with this then. Can you send us a list of either pre-proposed rules or other rules that are undergoing the informal review process? Can you send us a list of those rules?
I don't know what you're referring to when you talk about the
just all of them. Can you send us a list of those that are in the informal rule-making process, or those that are about to be proposed that they're asking you to weigh in on? Because you get comment in that deliberative process.
No, those are rules that are formally under review, sir.
So you're saying, so your testimony here today is that you never engage in dialogue back and forth on an informal rulemaking process?
So we don't have an informal rulemaking process. Agencies make rules.
Do you engage on informal rules making?
So
yes or no?
Again, I don't know what you're referring to when you refer to informal rulemaking.
So there's never an informal process in the deliberative process.
There are times when agencies will come to brief us on a rule that is under development.
That's informal.
So that, the rule is being developed by the agency. I assume it's part of a formal rulemaking process. So that's why I'm not quite sure what you mean by informal. They will on occasion come and brief us and say,
okay, what I'm talking about is before the rule is proposed, do they have discussions with you, Mr. Shalansky? That is very clear.
Okay.
Yes or no?
Sir, before it is submitted to us for review, or before the agency publishes it as a
before they
proposed rule?
publish it as a proposed rule, do they have discussions with you?
Of course they do, because then it is a formal review process. It has been submitted to OIRA for
So there's
review.
a formal review before they propose the rule.
Correct. Proposed rules, NPRMs, are reviewed formally.
So can we get
by
those
OIRA.
documents?
Excuse me?
I said, can we get those
The
documents?
documents you can have are the rule that they submitted to us, and then the rule that they published, so you can see what changed in that process. In terms of emails and interim discussions among staff, we do not disclose those.
Thank you. I'll recognize